2, 1. Two questions in this debate. Number 1, is this prioritization going to be effective for the people that they want? Is it actually enough to change a man's mind? 2, is this shift in narrative true? Because the value judgment that this narrative has also has a core principle deeply rooted into what feminism is going to act like if this change actually happens. I think opening government debates as if the feminist movement needs to cater to men. Which I think is quite ironic because that's literally the most basic stereotype that women face. That their space needs to be open to men because they can take care of them and fix all of their problems. OGs doesn't seem to understand that different movements exist to cater to the problems that men face. I don't understand why feminism is exclusively the only way to solve their problems. A lot of responses towards OG. 1. PM severely lacks characterization on how they want to portray men as victims. The first thing that opening government says is to explain all of the problems that exist that men face. We agree that those are a reality, but I don't understand why it's the feminist movement's fucking burden to care about that shit. Like, I know it's not an actor motion, but the trade-off that OG seems to forget is that the feminist movement champions women equality first and foremost. This is a reason as to why, there is a reason, why movements often target 1 to 2 major stakeholders and ideas, because literally any more than that leads to fragmentation, leads to having unclear stances. The core jump in logic that opening government has is that they automatically think the feminist movement wants more men into the movement. I would posit, probably not. They want more women into spaces that men still inhibit. They want to continue to break shackles that women have that are currently held by men. TLDR, feminist movement has less of an ability to spread its message to work. I think OG is very valiant in defending men. Maybe they can do it in an emotion that actually requires their case. The second thing that they say is that they jump to all of the big impacts that they want. More men into the movement, more change, better equality. The first and most obvious response here is to ask why this is a good thing that the feminist movement wants to have. Currently, right now, millions upon millions of women in the developing world are still shackled by traditional narratives and environment that treats them as only housewives and cooks. Note, you cannot get more women outside of these places if you are actively saying that men have no implicit fault in putting these women there to begin with. So I hope the rebuttal is clear. OG in this debate has only proved why men have every incentive to not want to be labeled as the enemy by the feminist movement. I will explain why that ultimately harms the movement more. Lastly, DPM has to understand the scarcity of resources and messaging, right? If these men who all side can agree to an extent is culpable, we are told that they are the victim, you make the tipping point of all of these problems super vague and you blame it on the system. But as Joseph characterized, the system is literally inhibited by men, so in order to fix the problem, you need to target the men as well. Before the extension, CG, do you have anything? OG.
Yeah, so the very definition of feminism is equal rights and equal support for all of the genders, regardless of anything. And the frame of the debate literally talks about the men being victims, not women.
I understand that, right? Because that's a definition. But what happens in reality is all of the stuff that we are talking about. Just on impacts alone, our messaging is just able to help a lot more the marginalized women. If you want to save men, you can do that in your own movements, men going their own way or something. Those exist. Those are an equally okay alternative. Extension. On the label of the victim, why it is inherently something that will be perceived as a passive role, why you are unlikely to push men for change, and why labeling them as beneficiaries is a better world to live in. Why is this true? The first mech is just on optics and perception. In this particular context, what does the label of a victim say to the particular subgroups of men? I think 3 things. A, if you are already feminist leaning, then it's not likely to change your mind. In fact, I don't really care if they're in this debate. 2, if you are heavily against feminist thought, you also probably don't matter because they'll hate you regardless of what you say. C, if you are found at the midpoint between semi-knowledgeable and semi-apathetic, we think that the label of the victim will tell them something very problematic. At the point in which you take the power out of their hands to actually do something about it. This is the likely thing that men are going to believe for the following reasons. 1, it is significantly easier to believe yourself as morally good and someone not intending to do bad versus someone who is actively doing something terrible. This is obvious. This is why you choose to think the easier option. 2, it is also easier to garner sympathy and to put yourself in a situation as a man because you literally have less stuff to do. If you are a victim, you're not going to be pushed to act as opposed to if you're a beneficiary when you have to change your act. This is the mech that OG misses. This is the actual analysis that breaks the assertions that government gives you. Note that this has very clear impacts. The first impact is that in comparison to the label of beneficiary, there is a lot less of an opportunity for the feminist movement to call out injustices in the instance of victimhood. Whenever a man messes up, he cannot be called anymore as a direct enemy. He will always be labeled and excused as a victim. This heavily reduces the persuasive capacity of the feminist movement because now the enemy that they point to is what? The system. Who can face the system, right? Note that this is where I want to position against OG because a lot of the shotgun impacts that they have don't necessarily fly in this debate at the point in which they don't discuss incentive or capacity. We on OO have discussed that. OG cannot fly. The second impact is that this prioritization will just lead to less women, ironically enough, being empowered. Because everything OG is correct, like assuming OG is correct at their best, all of the benefits that they have impact men. Less women are promoted, less women are prioritized. You are literally becoming a movement for men. This is probably not something the feminist movement wants. Why is this extension or why is that particular mech important in the round? As to what we say, given the analysis that we have given you, it's just a lot more likely that the characterization falls under the skew towards the men, less towards the women. The second mechanism really quickly is just on the active label or the benefits that you get as a consequence of becoming a beneficiary or labeling the beneficiary, right? Again, very clear actor analysis. This is what OG lacks. The most important stakeholder in this round is the people likely to change and are at the midpoint to whether or not they want to become a supporter of the feminist movement. Why then is the label of the beneficiary likely to push these men forward? One, these men have an active incentive to pursue to become a better person. They are going to want to pursue to become better because they don't want to hurt all of their female friends, their mothers, their sisters, their girlfriends, whatever exists. Having a beneficiary is not necessarily going to automatically assume to be a bad thing because they know they have an every active incentive to stop becoming a beneficiary or to stop doing all of that terrible things and to actually become a supporter. The second inherent benefit that they have or that we have is that it's just a lot more helpful and a lot more likely for the feminist movement to have an explicit target and to have an explicit messaging. I think for all of those reasons, it's very clear what you get from OO. You get a clear message, you get a clear stance. Closing, please respond. For all those reasons, oppose.